Hey, welcome back to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and this week on the show we have part 2 with Ollie Villanueva of the Baltimore Ravens and formerly of the 75th Ranger Regiment, 10th Mountain Division and West Point graduate. And episode 1, he talked about his journey from Spain to West Point to the Army and into the 75th. And in part 2, he's going to talk about his time in the 75th Ranger Regiment and how he made that transition from the Army into the NFL. It's a great story for anybody out there that's in a transition, some great lessons to be learned there, and I hope you enjoy it. But before we get to the episode, I just want to give a quick thank you to everybody out there that contributed and became a Patreon of the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. What you're giving us goes directly into producing this show and going to be some more content that we're putting out, and we truly could not do this without you, and I greatly appreciate it. And your t-shirts and your mugs and your stickers will be in the mail in the next 10 days, and you'll have them. And again, just really appreciate it. And for anybody else out there that would like to know more about the Leading with Vulnerability podcast or blog, go to our website at leadingwithvulnerability.net. I know that's a mouthful. That's a long one. But please go out there and check it out. Give us your feedback on the blog posts, your feedback on these videos, some things you would like to see, or maybe some things you'd like to even see different. I'm always open to some feedback. But without further ado, let's get to part 2 with Ollie Villanueva of the Baltimore Ravens. Yeah, I think it's a lot of officers probably did that. What's the quickest way to get back over there? And the regiment, we just, went in and out for 20 years straight. You could predictability. You knew what you're going to do and where you're going to be. Yeah, that's good. And so your time in the 75th, how long were you? Were you there 2 years total?
2.5 years, yeah.
So what was that time like from your regular Army days to the guys at regiment? I think there's a lot of similarities, but there are some different personalities, especially on the NCO side and regiment.
Oh my God, the NCO side of regiment. Yeah. So the regular Army was more like band of brothers. You have a lot of different personalities. The mission is what everybody's focused on, and you just go out there and try to do what's best. A lot of times, you don't know how to do the task. There's no manual. You sort of figure it out together.
Yep.
So we had to build a cop. One of my first assignments, be on outpost, man, we sat down for 30 minutes arguing whether it should be a triangle, whether it should be we didn't know. There's no, nobody's going to read the manual. You just kind of talk about it. You say, what's going to be the less digging of sand, and then you go out there and do it. When you join the 75th Ranger Regiment, there's a way of doing everything.
Right.
And as an officer, you feel incredibly intimidated by the fact that NCOs know a lot more of everything,
right? And
they kind of run the organization, and you have to find your role. And if you don't find your role, you get fired. And there's a lot of pressure from getting fired in the Ranger Regiment. So, when I first went into the regiment, I was in the S3. I was in LNO, so I was able to see how they run ops.
Oh yeah.
And so I was able to familiarize myself with all the units, with all the assets, with all the procedures, with how everything works. I had to brief all the missions to the commander and get them approved, and at the same time I got to hang out with other branches of the military. So it was a really fun experience being in Bagram and learning the corporate culture, I guess you say, of special operations. Very, very different from the regular Army. And then when I finally got in,
you're good. Keep going.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, when I finally got into 175 and I got handed a platoon, and I knew that all my success and all my failures would be revolving around my relationship with the platoon sergeant. And I got incredibly blessed with Sergeant Donaldson, who was an unbelievable all-star, and he came from the 82nd.
Yep.
So I thought that I was very lucky and fortunate to have somebody who came from the regular Army, because the Ranger Regiment is a little bit, they're a little bit spoiled from the standpoint of, recognizing the value that the regular Army has.
Yeah.
They think that they're in the 75th Ranger Regiment and they're the best. And, there's a lot of great warriors in other units in the military, and they don't have, as many assets, and they don't have as many, means as the 75th Ranger, Regiment has. So I was paired up with Sergeant First Class Donaldson. and we just had an amazing time.
Yeah.
It was very humbling for me, as big as I am, you cannot impose yourself on anybody in Ranger Regiment.
Yep.
You cannot ever have an attitude that you know anything, because you don't. And so it was a cool challenge of starting from the bottom again, and starting from a position of vulnerability,
for sure.
and being incredibly, sort of, how can I help? How can I do? How can I find a role? And so I did 2 rotations. I did a rotation as a platoon leader out in Fob Shank.
Yep.
And it was a pretty interesting story because, again, this is the first time I've been able to say this, because now I guess it doesn't matter anymore, right? But, I have a very interesting personality. I'm not the prototypical, I love the Army at all costs and hua, hua, hua. And my company commander, had to decide which platoon was going to be the Katejas platoon.
Oh, yeah.
And which platoon was going to be paired up with the Afghan Special Forces. Nobody wanted that assignment.
No, I've had that one. Yeah.
Right. Nobody wanted to be with the Katejas, because if you were with the Katejas, that meant that half your force was going to be, Afghans, and controlling your element was going to be very difficult. And you knew everything had to be sort of like being an RI and teaching, everybody how to do their job. And you couldn't take all your men on a mission, which is an incredibly frustrating and, somewhat embarrassing thing for a Ranger. You got an E5 who's ready to go.
You got to cut him.
And you got to cut him, and you have to take an Afghan. So, my company commander pulls me aside and said, listen, you got a pretty interesting personality, speak a lot of languages, you get along with others. We're going to give you the Katejas platoon. And obviously the next day, the platoon, they just hate me. They're like, sir, you're the worst. Why? This is your attitude, this and that. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, guys. I wish I could have had a high and tight the whole time and do more push-ups and sit-ups. And then the next day, General comes out and says, like, yeah, the only platoon that's going out is the Katejas platoon.
I know. Yeah.
Sir, you're the best. You're awesome. Your personality, you got us in here. So I was able to do missions with the Rangers, with the Katejas platoon.
Yep.
And, obviously that experience was mind-blowing. My AO, I knew it like the back of my hand. I had to walk everywhere in 10th Mound. It was maybe, I would say, a square of 15 miles by 10 miles, so, I knew every inch. I knew where I was going to get hit. It was the same thing over and over again. And now you're in the Rangers and you get in a Chinook and you have to plan missions, all over the area. I was in the central area of Afghanistan, so I had, a lot of places. It was very cold. I was in the mountains, so I got to see the other side of Afghanistan.
Yeah, much different than Kandahar.
Very, very different. I remember the first missions. I would be embarrassed to be on the radio because I was so tired. I would be like, over here. So super cold, incredibly challenging terrain, and I remember, when you have to plan where you're going to land, and you think, these 5 clicks, we can do 5 clicks, but you don't realize the change of elevation, and how tough it is.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, the weather conditions were the hardest variable, especially because everything was at night.
Right.
And but it was very fun. I mean, I was able to find my role. I was able to contribute. I was able to understand, what is it that is required of me, which is incredibly difficult. You got a company commander, I got my platoon sergeant, and I'm in the middle going like,
right. Yeah.
So it was a good experience. I again, at first very challenging, very difficult, but you can start getting to know everybody. My platoon sergeant was awesome. Company commander was great. First sergeant was also, an awesome a piece of my development, because we were all so different in terms of our personalities. And we were able to form a team. We were able to be on the same page. And I really enjoyed my time in regiment. Obviously, I had so much respect for the organization. I understood, that it's bigger than you. It's always about the regiment. It's never about the individual. Yep. It's about the way. It's about how we do things. Right. It's not about you thinking that you're smarter than anybody else. Yep. It's just follow the way. And you need to have some bulldog NCOs to protect these Einstein officers from reinventing the wheel every single time they show up to regiment.
Yeah. I think when I left to go be an RI, I kind of had that regiment arrogance about me, 375 mean mug or whatever. Right. Everybody has their thing. There's some really good people in the Army too. There's a lot of great
yeah,
NCOs
absolutely.
and stuff that are there, and it was good for me to see that other side of it. Made me a better leader overall. So you come back, you come over to ACO, you fill in the XO role for a little bit, and then that NFL itch or that football itch. Like,
Yeah.
what's the
You know what?
what's the why behind all that?
Man, that was a very interesting time in my life. So I got to get to Hell's Platoon. I was in heaven. I was going to do all the missions, that whole deployment, and the other two, platoons were going to be looking at me do
Yeah.
all the missions. You were laughing at me the whole time.
Yeah,
Now look at me. But obviously, the company commander didn't think it was fair,
Right.
so they sent me home early. They sent this not me. They sent my platoon home early. About 30 days early on our deployment. And man, that did not sit well for me. It was not it was one of those moments where I was like, man, if I had the issue when I got back from 10th Mountain Division with somebody in the civilian life trying to cheat me or trying to take advantage of me, this was a moment, my third deployment where I said, man, like I'm dying to go on missions.
Yeah.
I want to be in Afghanistan. I never want to go back. I want to do what all the Rangers are doing. I want to have 19 deployments,
Right.
no social life, and just live,
Yeah.
for, benching and deploying. There's the two things you do in 175.
That's right.
And so when they sent me back, I was like, man, what is this? Why is this happening?
Right.
And then I started, realizing that the Afghan war was either going to be an unwinnable war, or it was just going to be, more of the same forever.
Yeah.
And so I started getting really frustrated at the fact that I wanted to be an infantry officer. I wanted to be in the front lines. I was willing to do anything to never leave that. And when I say this, this is what most people in the infantry, my teammates from West Point, my classmates from West Point, everybody that I went to Ranger School with, the guys that passed and the guys that didn't pass, every single person that I went to RASP, the guys that passed and the guys that didn't pass, every single person was dying to fulfill their idea and the romantic vision of becoming a soldier and a warrior. And for me, when they sent me back and they had me talk to HRC, and they were like, well, you spend too much time as a platoon leader in your in your military career. You're behind the curve to go to captain's career course. So we're going to send you to Benning. We're going to make you wait 6 months for the next class. Then you're going to go do captain's career course. And then because you went light infantry, then we're going to send you to heavy. We're going to send you to Fort Hood, and we're going to send you to, wherever. And you're probably going to do 12 months of command instead of 18 because, by the way, there's a BRAC movement, right around 2014. So we're removing a brigade from every infantry division. So there's a surplus of officers. And so, I got super frustrated. I was very, very emotional about, what the Army was trying to do with me. And, if I ever talked to a mentor or somebody, they would always say something that, every Army officer should know is you're serving the military. And the military is not serving you.
That's right.
You have to do whatever you're asked to do. And I just, I didn't have that vision for myself. And I'll always regret not knowing where my career could have ended in the military, because the military is an amazing place because of the, individually, maybe not for your family, for your family, it's a completely different story, but individually, I don't think you can find more purpose, than in the military. It's very, very difficult. And so, I was like, man, you know what? Screw this. I'm leaving the military. It's my 5-year mark. I can get out. I do feel that that I was not the only one feeling this.
No.
That a lot of officers that were coming back from their deployments, they were calling HRC and they were hearing the same news, and they were saying, I can do the next 3 years of my life for 12 months of inventory in some heavy mechanized unit. This is not what I signed up for.
Right.
And so a lot of us got out. If you went ROTC instead of West Point, you had the Yellow Ribbon program, so you can go to school and they will pay for it. But because I went to West Point, I didn't have that. So I needed a way to educate myself into how to be a civilian again, because I knew nothing of the civilian. I didn't even know what's an accountant. I don't even know. I knew nothing about jobs or what am I going to do? So
And that's a misconception. People think like the officers got it all figured out.
oh my God, no.
No,
It's-
I mean, just
it's
because
the
you got a
worst.
college degree and you went straight to the Army, transition is still hard for
It's
no matter
very
where
difficult.
you are.
It's very difficult because a lot of jobs, you don't even know what you do in those jobs. And when
Right.
you start doing those jobs, like, man, I don't want to do this. It's the same. Basically, you find yourself in the same predicament, that you were in the Army. I don't want to do
Absolutely.
this job, So you're just if I could go back, I will. Yeah, sure. Let me do the inventories on
Yeah.
these, Bradleys,
Yeah.
and then maybe I'll go teach at West Point. I'll do something cool later in my career.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to go to school, and I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna network. Everybody. There's a career path for West Pointers, which is you go 5 years, 4 years of West Point, 5 years in the military, and then you get out. You go to a business school, and then you learn everything. You get some networks, and then you start working. And when you go to business school, you basically find out. Okay, so you can go corporate, you can go entrepreneurship, you can do your own thing, you can maybe get some networks and work for people
Yeah.
that you meet at business school. So I was trying to get into one of these top schools. I knew that, studying for me is not difficult, grinding it out, write an interview and essays about,
Yeah.
how much whatever means to me. And
Yeah.
so I was trying to go to one of the top schools until I saw the bill
Oh yeah.
of how much it would cost, and I was like, golly, I'm gonna have to indebt myself
Yeah.
for so long. And so then I started panicking about, man, financially, am I gonna be able to afford this? I just got married, I want to have a family. How am I gonna be able to have a family if I have to, go to business school and get myself $150,000 in
Yeah.
debt and then find a job, and then I started looking at all the costs, and it's just is not adding up, So I had this crazy idea based on a St. Patrick's Day right around, Savannah, where I meet one of my old
Yeah.
teammates.
A lot of crazy ideas come out of St. Patrick's Day around.
So many crazy ideas.
I know that,
So I'm dressed up as a leprechaun,
The biggest leprechaun in
the
history.
biggest leprechaun in history. I'm dressed up as a leprechaun. The entire unit is in Afghanistan. I'm the only platoon that's in Savannah.
Oh wow.
So my platoon, we're
I can imagine.
we're going out.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy. Sergeant Donaldson and I are doing the patrol, and we're in no state of of being able to do anything. And I talked to one of my Army football buddies, and he's like, man, I'm trying out for the NFL. They got this program with this tryout called a regional combine, where they celebrate these combines and people go to them and you pay and the scouts look at you and you can have you can try to go to the NFL. One of our teammates, Josh McNair, he's in the NFL right now. Man, they're making $480,000 as a first year guy, and I was like, man, $480,000, that's what I need. I need that to go to the business school. And so I said, screw it, let's try it. I mean, just kind of like an American Idol type thing. I was like, I'm going to try to make myself somehow appealing to NFL teams. I've had the experience of, what does it take to become an American citizen? All right, I got to dip, I got to wear camo, you know what I mean? I got to talk about freedom, now I got to try to, play football. Okay, I got to do drills really hard and, and talk to the coach and know my plays, okay, Army football. Then I got to go to Ranger school. Okay, I got to, have my packing list. I got to really know how to do a con op. I knew that to be an officer, you have to know how to do a con op and speak clearly and for people to understand the plan.
Yeah.
And, to be able to look at people in the eye and not say nonsense, just say whatever has to be needed. Right. Yeah. So boom, I know how to do the Ranger school infantry. I was like, man, I feel like I can fool people into
figure this out.
Becoming a tight end. Let's become a tight end, right? Like I look like a tight end.
Yeah.
So I did this regional thing, and
was that into like Detroit?
Yeah. So the first one was in Flowery Branch. So
yeah.
So the one that I did in Flowery Branch in Atlanta, I didn't tell anybody in 175. I just went on the weekend. I did it, and it was hysterical. I mean, it was a bunch of, high school gym teachers who thought they could play in the NFL.
Thinking of that movie Invincible.
Yeah, no, it
out.
really was wild. It was crazy. I mean, it was. I don't know if maybe yeah. I mean, they ended the program, right? So the program was not producing NFL athletes, right? So it was, it was you give us money and we'll give you the illusion of giving you a chance to get in the NFL. So it was hysterical. I mean, I'm criticizing it, but I mean, I benefited from it.
Yeah, you did.
But there was somebody that walked into the gym with a giant cross. He was carrying this giant cross. He was just saying, they doubted me. They doubted me. First round, first pick. He really thought he was going to get, drafted at the first round with the first pick out of this tryout. And I was doing it in my army shorts and, tube socks, and nobody ran under a 5 flat, and there was a 45-year-old man trying to become a safety. So the whole experience was crazy. Very intimidating, obviously. I mean, it was like the auditions for American Idol. But if you switch it over to the NFL,
yeah.
But somehow, again, I was able to fool them. Can you long snap? Yeah, I can slide. I'll do whatever. I can punt. They sent me to Detroit for that one because it fell outside of the 120-mile radius from 175. I had to ask for leave, and that's when my chain of command found out about my plans to go into the NFL.
Right.
And as soon as that happened, then it was kind of like, you're not committed to being a Ranger. Yeah. You're looking for something else. We're gonna push you out by encouraging you to do this.
Right.
So yeah, hell yeah, go to Detroit and try out. But we're gonna start submitting your package to get out of
blacklist you.
Right. So it was a little bit like, oh man, and people were just kind of saying like, hey, good luck, knowing. I mean, everybody knew that I was not gonna make it.
Right.
Nobody makes it. Nobody serves in the military for 5 years. And then they try out for the NFL, and then they get into the NFL. It was something that I had in the back of my mind, saying like, if it happens, great.
Right.
But I was not really thinking through the process of becoming an NFL player. Like, I never even asked myself, do you want to become an NFL player? It was more like, I want to become successful in life and be able to have a family and be able to move forward. Yeah. And I don't want to do inventories in Fort Hood. How do I?
Doing inventories in Fort Hood would change a lot of people's perspective.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did the Detroit combine, and then only one team called me, and they were interested in bringing me, and it just so happened it was our block leave. So I drove all the way to Philly to meet with the Eagles, and it was Chip Kelly, who was, a huge, a lot of coaches are big military fans. Yeah. They admire that process that we talked about earlier about the Ranger Regiment, or, let's give them some credit. Maybe the Navy SEALs, these organizations where you just give yourself to the organization and it gets so much out of the individual because you're just so committed.
Yeah.
So Chip Kelly, was really into the military, maybe really into the PR of having a player who served, in Afghanistan, and so I was like, man, play into this, and maybe they'll keep you for 1 year. I just wanted 1 year. I wanted 1 year, pay for business school, and then we're done.
Yeah.
And I was the first player cut. As soon as we did training camp, I was the first player cut. But the Pittsburgh Steelers saw me doing one of the preseason games. They picked me up, and then I was able to go to Pittsburgh, still, following my dream of getting educated, going to business school.
Yeah.
I started at Carnegie Mellon. I started playing football, for them. And then, 7 years later, I guess I accomplished the things that I set out myself to do after the military, but that transition being, psychologically especially, being the hardest thing.
Yeah. How are those first year or two in Pittsburgh there, transitioning out of service into something new? How was that for you?
Oh, it was awful.
Was there any, like, some regret? Like, I should have never left service?
Oh my God, 100%. Think about it. Your favorite team leader is telling you that they had an insane deployment.
Oh yeah.
That things revved up again.
Yep.
That you missed out. I'm like, oh my God, no way. Yeah. No amount of money, no amount of anything that you can find in football compares to my childhood. People were saying, oh yeah, Villanueva achieves the childhood dream of NFL. I was like, NFL? I grew up in Rhoda. Yeah. I grew up reading My Muse Better Than You Mew in bathrooms everywhere. I grew up just watching Marines do curls in front of a mirror for hours. That's all I wanted to do. That was my dream. My dream was to be that nomad who's living out of a duffel bag and the NATO tents in Kandahar, just getting ready to be called up to do something that, requires an immense amount of courage and conviction to do. That's what I wanted to do. And when you're playing in the NFL and you talk to, your buddies at 175, and they're having a blast, and they're getting after it, and they're being challenged, and they're fulfilling their vision of being a soldier. It was tough. It was very tough. I mean, it took me 3 years of rationalizing and saying, you would have not been on that mission. You would have been a Fort Hood doing inventories. You know, that would have not been you. But no, your identity, you put on a uniform every single day. You try to keep yourself, looking good. You cut your hair, you shave your beard.
Yeah.
You put on socks and boots every day, and then you go into the NFL, and I never change my clothes. I grow my beard, and I'm wearing Rick and Morty t-shirts now. It's just you're just not. I didn't see the same things when I looked at myself in the mirror, anymore. It was very tough to make sense of things, and especially to talk to people about who you were. There's not like there's any other veterans out there that are maybe having some of the same conversations about how frustrating it is to get out of the military, and you kind of feel like a broken toy who just got out of the line, and now you're just trying to figure out how to be useful. So those 3 years were incredibly difficult for sure. I had amazing teammates who legitimately care about me.
Successful teams too. That probably helped. I mean,
the successful teams. I mean, it helps. It helps to win for sure. But my goal was to finish business school. I mean, that really was my goal. My goal was it's a job, and the NFL is a job to me. Everything that comes with the fandom and everything that comes with the media, that stuff is for anybody that comes from Ranger Regiment, it's awful. It's just terrible. You want to be a quiet professional. That's what gets ingrained into you. And you get in a microphone shoved in your face all the time, and you have to tell stories, and people have feelings and opinions about it
everything
all the time, and it's always going to be divisive. And then you go through the whole, everything that happens with, politics and football merging together. And so it was not, from that standpoint, I was like, oh man, this stuff sucks. I like my assignments. I like my I like getting better at my job. I like learning how to do something that I've never done before, because that's all I've done my whole life. Hey, you're a platoon leader now. You're an XO now. You're an LNO now. Just learn the jobs. Hey, talk to people. Be reliant on others to be successful. But everything that has to do with you and the evaluation and are you a good platoon leader or not, and the subjectivity that comes into everything, that's never enjoyable to anybody. But my teammates really did help me out. I was able to vent and talk a lot about my frustrations with the military, the perception of the military, veterans, all that stuff, and they were good psychiatric evaluators, and
that's good.
And they always kept me sane, and they kept me from steering into one direction or the other.
Still a team environment, still good.
For sure. For sure.
So do you see between those, some of us cocky Rangers and their NFL, is there any personality similarities between SOF and NFL guys?
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of entitlement into thinking, I know how to do this.
I'm not the Katejas platoon guy.
Right.
It's not
think about platoon sergeant. A platoon sergeant, the platoon does not operate without the platoon sergeant.
Right.
The platoon sergeant is more important than the platoon leader, and is more important than, players know that too.
Yeah.
What are you you're not going to play me?
Right.
No, of course you're going to play me. So you're always going to test the boundaries.
Yeah.
That's what, everybody that's successful in an organization, wants to somehow let people know that. And I observed that from, seeing how some platoon sergeants would behave in the end. A lot of units, for example, in the SOF community, when it comes to PT, for example, PT is not, it's not, sometimes it's not, I don't want to do PT, or I'm going to do PT however I want to do PT. The same thing in the NFL. Hey, you know what? Yeah, you have these lifts. I'm going to do my own stuff, So the physical training is something common to both the military and the NFL. And how certain performers approach that is for sure something that they can relate to an NFL star and to a Ranger stud. Obviously there's a pecking order in every locker room.
Absolutely,
there's always a pecking order in regiment. In terms of if someone says something, you're debating air, which is the most controversial thing. You're debating how you're going to do something, and somebody speaks up, then there's always a pecking order. And so but they're very different organizations because, the NFL has the money variable, which is, the root of all evil in a lot of things.
Oh, that's interesting. So, in your time in the NFL, something I talk about is transition stuff and how guys, when they leave soft, they leave the regiment, they leave whatever, or they have they don't have full emotional intelligence, emotional awareness. They have troubles finding their purpose, and I've seen that in sports too. That people that have played sports, they've been part of the teams in some cases since they were little kids, all the way through professional sports, and then all of a sudden one day that's gone.
Yeah.
Do you see some of that struggles and how do guys? What are some of the coping mechanisms and things that make guys successful? Because there's some similarities there for sure.
I wish I had the answer, but it's incredibly difficult, and I struggle tremendously with my transition out of the military. But I was able to find my way through. I was able to find footing. I was able to find new ways of thinking. I read a lot of philosophy. I try to read as much as I can. And so that helped a lot, as I was getting out of the military and kind of closing a chapter of my life that is, still to this day, I still go back to Rotor Naval Station and I work out in the same MWR gym that I've been working on my whole life. I'm seeing ospreys take off and little birds and jets as I'm doing my passive drills. And when I look at them, I say, this had so much meaning to me my whole life, and now it's time to move on, So I wish I knew the answer. I wish I knew if it's even possible sometimes to transition. Yeah. And,
I think you nailed it, though. It's lifelong learning, right?
Right.
You're always trying to figure out and understand yourself. So because you don't know who you are, you can't be successful in the next phase. And that's what I, with Rangers all the time when they are running toward the exit door, it's like, well, just wait a second. Maybe the regiment's where you're supposed to be. Let's look at it.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is always going to be in your head. It's always going to be your perception. You have a perception that you're no longer, purposeful. You have a perception that, so it's always all in your head, And a lot of times, it is true that, your ego gets in the way, a lot because you feel like you are now a pretty significant, member of a very successful organization, whether it's the NFL or the Ranger Regiment. And now you have to get out, and now you no longer carry any of that anymore. Nobody's going to remember who I am football-wise in a year after I retire.
Right.
Because I don't know who the players were when I got into the NFL a year, after they retire. So in the same as the military, somebody's going to, nobody knows who Colonel so-and-so is, who was the, battalion commander, or nobody knows who Sergeant so-and-so who was Team Merrill and it just, nobody knows. It's just, we live in the present and the past is, it's very difficult to carry with us, and so it's always about the future, and that's kind of the mentality that you sort of have to figure it out that unfortunately nobody cares, right? Unfortunately nobody's gonna pat you in the back and say, wow, thank you for all your missions, they were so crazy. I feel like that's one of that was one of the funniest things, when I was in the NFL. And I had been to Afghanistan for so long. So many times, and I've had seen everything from Rotor Naval Station and understanding the military and how it works, to the JOC and seeing how everything, all the units and everything, and then you go into the military, into the civilian life, and people cannot tell the difference between somebody in the Air Force or somebody in the Navy, or and you're like, no, it's not the same. But then you say, like, who cares? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. You guys all serve in the military. Who cares? Stop trying to. Obviously, there's a lot of units. We would have a lot of units come to, and talk to, us as NFL teams, and I would always talk to the players and be like, dude, it's not what you think it is. But there's no reference point. People don't have a reference point as to who you are and what you did. Because it's impossible to know so much about so many people and so many things. Right. So, NFL, military, successful corporates, whatever it might be, academia, it doesn't matter. You have a life that is yours, that nobody's going to be able to live. You're not going to be able to live anyone's life. And so you go with the understanding that nothing really matters that much. Therefore, try to make the best out of everything.
Yeah. I think it takes vulnerability, right? Not only, what's your definition of vulnerability?
My definition, I would say is, I think I think everybody has innate weaknesses, whether you are, you consider yourself the best or the worst, you're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Right. And so you have to learn how to live with your imperfections. And those that have the confidence about, how to overcome those imperfections and those weaknesses, whether it's relying on others, whether it's understanding that they have to work harder, whether it's they have to listen more. I think those people usually have the appearance of being more approachable and more successful than those that do not see their weaknesses, or what they're vulnerable to,
Right. So, your father, you got 4 kids now. So how's being a dad change your perspective about, life in general? And
it's trippy.
What your future is going to be like?
It's very trippy to have kids and see them grow up, because you start seeing yourself, in your kids, and you start realizing that, there's a lot. Your kids look up to you, and they pick up a lot of things from you, and what you teach your kids, the values that you pass down from generation to generation, is basically how you're going to stay alive in perpetuity.
Right. Yeah.
Your values and the things that you care about the most. I tell my kid that airborne rangers don't cry. I tell him all the time. He doesn't cry now. He has that inner toughness of the military bearing of being able to be around very complex situations. Like, we'll go out fishing and it's raining and it's awful weather, and he misses mommy and he wants to go back, and you say airborne rangers don't cry. And now he has this idea of airborne rangers, of being the Ubermensch, the supreme creatures that do not, and that's kind of how I feel like I grew up. I grew up always looking up to the Marines. The Marines don't break. The Marines always keep. And so, it's funny to pass down to my son, sort of that idea of masculinity, of what it's like to be a man.
Yeah.
And sometimes not really necessarily be really sure if it's the right way. Obviously, you continuously always hear different, perspectives, different ways of doing things, but it's just the way it is. Yeah. It's just something that is innate to me, that is being passed down to my kid, that you have to be tough, that you have to, muscle through it, that you have to not show emotions, that nobody cares about your problems.
Yeah.
And that there's this vision of, or idea of yourself that is all conquering and all awesome, and you have to strive to be that man. And so having daughters is also showing me that I don't have a lot of I don't have a lot of experience with women in terms of working with them or how to approach them, but they're incredibly intelligent creatures. And they're able to manipulate me in insane ways. And so for me, it's a lot about enjoying them and trying to show them how I am, so that they gain perspective on how men think, but knowing that I'm not going to reach my daughters the same way that I'm reaching my son. My son just wants to be like me. My daughters obviously know already that they cannot be like me. And so it's been a really fun experience, probably the most fulfilling of my life for sure. And it's been incredibly fulfilling, and in a way, giving me the purpose that I've been looking for. Being a father it's been an unbelievable experience.
Yeah, it's the greatest thing being a father is. And so switch back 2 more questions we'll go back to the military side, and it's a question I ask everybody. So your deployments, 10th Mountain, 75th, what was your toughest day in uniform?
My toughest day was my last day in uniform. That was the day that, as I look back, deployments, missions, combat, firefights, death, all that stuff is something that I expected, something that I planned for my whole life. Leaving the military and not having an identity is not something that you ever plan for.
Yeah, right.
It's something that it just hits you. It's just like, holy smokes. I'm no longer waking up in the morning and shaving and saluting the flag. Something that everybody dreads, saluting the flag in the mornings until you don't do it anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
The Ranger Creed.
Oh yeah.
Saying the Ranger Creed every morning, having people screaming at the top of their lungs as a full, the conviction of the words, arguing about, why is it that we're jumping out of airplanes in the, 21st century? Are we ever going to jump? I mean, those things, in the fact that you no longer belong to that organization. We talked about moving on, but man, it's just that last day in uniform, the day that you just never have to put it on again. It's very. I think it's funny when service members always talk about, I cannot wait to. They say it in such way. Everybody says it in such ways as if they're trying to convince themselves that it's going to be better when they don't have to. But they know in the back of their minds that it's a giant leap. It's incredibly difficult. All the memories and all the experiences you just had in that uniform are always going to be with you, and you're never going to be able to go back and resume or change something about it. It's a chapter you're closing down. So for me, the last day in uniform was incredibly difficult. I still kept it in my wardrobe for 3 or 4 years.
Oh wow.
I couldn't look at a wardrobe and not see my uniform, my ACUs or my multicams, my PT clothes. I would always run into a 1st Ranger Battalion shirt or those Safi pants. And I always run into them and say, man, maybe one day I'll wear them again. Maybe one day I'll do PT in them. But you're not going to. You're not going to want to put a shirt that no longer has the same meaning. Yeah. How hard is it to earn that 1st Ranger Battalion PT T-shirt and those super short shorts? How much did you want to wear multicams when they first came out?
Absolutely, yeah.
And now you no longer have the ability to do that. So it's tough.
I think you said it there. I've talked to people before, and it's not. I get to put on the uniform. I don't have to put on the uniform. I get to put it on every day. It's you look at it, and that day's coming quick for me. I don't know how I'm going to handle it.
Yeah, but it comes to for everybody. I always ask myself, man, what's it like for a sergeant major who's been in the military 35 years?
Yeah, I know.
And then he no longer has to wake up in the morning and do PT and shave. Like, man, it's been his whole identity, his whole life. The army way, not stepping on the grass. You know how many years it took me to start stepping on the grass when I'm walking around driveways. So it's part of life. Yeah. It embodies the life cycle that it is. You have to enjoy it while you can, even though you're never gonna have the ability to fulfill the moment, because you're not gonna understand. It's all part of. I remember people always telling me, you don't know how lucky you are. When I was running suicides at Army football, so you will give anything to be back here.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? I can't wait to graduate. And now you look back and say, wow, Army football was like, geez.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's great. So if you could go back and give Lieutenant Villanueva a piece of advice, this is as much for that or the lieutenant that might be listening that's coming through the pipeline, what would you tell him?
Yeah, I don't know if I believe in free will at the end of the day. I believe I was a product of, being raised in Rota Naval Station, seeing Marines, seeing service members cycle through, get ready to go to war. Being a soldier meant more to me than anything else. So nothing was ever going to take away my feeling and my drive to become Lieutenant Dan and that's I always thought that in the movie they did such a good job depicting that character, so it was never a lack of for my failures. It was never a lack of the want. It was just always more a matter of knowing who I was, so if I could go back and say, Lieutenant Villanueva, man, you have to know who you are, because when you know who you are, you're going to understand that you're not a very diligent person. You're not somebody that enjoys doing the paperwork that comes in the Army. That was not your vision and idea of an officer to have to do a 15-6 investigation.
Oh yeah.
Of a broken window on a bus, and I hope that whoever company commander assigned me to do this is listening to this and smiling. But that was never what I envisioned doing. I envisioned being out there in the front lines. And so if I'd have known myself better I would have told him, your idea of what it's like being a soldier might not be what the Army wants for you. Your idea of, maneuvering through the bureaucratic nightmare to be in 3rd Brigade and being in the front lines of Kandahar, that might not be, what's what you're supposed to be. So let go a little bit. Do in the service. Do what you're being asked to do, not what you think you should be doing. I think I would have been happier with myself, less frustrated. I would have probably stayed in the military a lot longer because I would have seen it in the same way. And, based on that understanding, I would have been a lot better taking off my uniform and saying, you did everything you were asked. You did a great job serving. You have no regrets. You have nothing to look back to and say, man, I wish I would have done that. And, I would not have as many feelings as I do now regarding, absolutely everything, like Afghanistan now, like, geez, I catch myself driving and just thinking through so many things about Afghanistan and my time there. And I know that a lot of veterans are feeling the same way, but if I had that different attitude of, maybe you were not supposed to be the platoon leader that was going to win the war. You were just the platoon leader that was serving. And yep, there's a lot of things about the country that you're not going to be able to fix. And at the end of the day, you serve. And that's what it's all about. It's about servitude and not about the decision makings at the White House level. And so, it's something that I think would have helped me a lot in my career, and it would still help me today. I just don't feel like I can change it sometimes. I feel like I get caught in my own head, and things sometimes are just too complicated, moving too fast, too much information. You just don't know which way to go sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you got camp coming up soon, which I know you're looking forward to, going to Wrap Week again.
For sure.
Yeah. You always hear about the vets and how much they love camp, going back to camp every year. So.
Yeah, but you know what? It's what I've been asked to do.
Yeah.
I have to, every year I have to go back to Rotor Naval Station. I have to go back to where I'm from. I have to see my whole path and my whole life so that I can, have a meeting with myself and say, this is exactly what you want. This is where you should be. You have to go to camp. You have to excel in everything you do because, it's just, what you want to do with your life. It's the idea and the vision that you have for yourself. So I'm definitely looking forward to the new chapter of Baltimore Ravens, following the new training ways and new position and everything. So
it'll be fun
for sure.
It'll be fun to watch. Appreciate it.